Hello, Renewers. I hope you're all doing well. Thanks so much for your buy-in to Renew Ministries. Have a little reflection here today. In fact, I'll be reflecting on this for the next couple newsletters. It says in Matthew 5, and I'm sure you've all heard this because I at least say it all the time. Jesus says, love, you've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Now, there Jesus says, love your enemies, do good to them who persecute you. And in Luke, he expands on it a little bit more in Luke chapter 6. This is a book by Paul Copan and Matthew Flannagan called Did God Commit Genocide? And they say here on page 301 that Jesus did not absolutize the commandment to love. He did not absolutize loving one's enemy. And their goal in this, it's on page 301 by the way, is they want to argue for a just war theory, that violence is sometimes justified, and that's totally compatible with the teachings of Jesus. They're also trying to say that Jesus sometimes condoned and engaged in violence as a way of making him compatible with the genocidal God, so they can argue that God, in fact, did command genocide, even though God is revealed in Jesus. That's kind of the story going on here. Now, they give some examples of this, and those examples are things I'll be addressing in the forthcoming newsletters. For right now, I just want to kind of set a general context for this and argue that Jesus' own teaching makes it impossible for us to find exceptions in it. The main thing is this. Notice in this passage, Jesus predicates loving enemies. He predicates his instructions on loving enemies on the nature of God. The way we show that we're children of the Father is when we love like the Father, and the Father loves like the sun shines and like the rain falls. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. The sun shines on the just and the unjust, and that's why we're to love both neighbors, friends, as well as enemies. So we manifest that we are children of the Father when we put on display his character, and his character is it loves indiscriminately. And that's why we're to engage in indiscriminate love. So by definition, the kind of love that we're to have and the kind of love the Father has is a love that doesn't pick and choose who it loves. It loves like the sun shines and like the rain falls. Hence, we're to love enemies. And there's no exceptions to that. There can be no exceptions to that by definition. The worthiness of the people that we're talking about is totally irrelevant because the command is based on the character of God, not the worthiness of the people that we're called to love. The second thing is this. When Jesus says love your enemies to a first century peasant Jewish audience, the first thing that they'll be thinking of are the Romans. The Romans are the enemies. The Romans are the persecutors. And they ruled this area, all areas, unjustly. The Pax Romana, the Peace of Rome, it's called, it was held in place by terror. The Romans were professional terrorists. They controlled through terror. If anyone messed with them, they would just go into a town and round up random people and crucify them on hillsides. The crucifixion was their main weapon of terror. And they'd leave them out there for a couple of days as a way of just saying, hey, this is what happens to you if you mess with us, if you resist us. You and your loved ones will be tortured in terrible ways. That's how they ruled, the Pax Romana. So when Jesus says love your enemies, that's what they're going to be thinking of primarily. And yet, he calls them to love them. The Romans are the worst kind of terrorists. The first century Jews would think about Romans the way most Americans think about ISIS. It's just that the Romans had already conquered, whereas Americans are worried about ISIS conquering us sometime, imposing their Sharia law. Well, the Romans had already conquered, and Jesus says love them. So I submit to you that if Romans don't constitute exceptions to the people we're called to love, then there are no exceptions to the people we're called to love. Jesus does absolutize his command to love. Now, in the forthcoming newsletters, I'll go over and attempt to refute some of the examples that Copan and Flannagan and others who are in that camp use to try to allege that Jesus condoned violence. I'm here to tell you that he did not. He did not condone violence. He did not condone not loving anybody. We're called to, the way we're loved is the way that we're supposed to love. Live in love as Christ loved us and gave his life for us. God bless you guys. Live in love. Take care.